What is their experience? What are their core competencies? How are they naturally wired? Are they people? Are they attention to detail? Are they great team players? Are they going to win at all cost?
First thing you're doing is creating a scorecard, because how do you know you found one if you don't know exactly what you're looking for?
One thing that the Who method talks about is the best source for like getting in the right candidates is referrals.
The whole idea of the screening interview is you want to go through as many people as possible and weed out as quickly as possible.
And I care a little bit less about like specifically what they say. I care more that they like are self-aware that they are good at things, and then does that line up with their personality profile?
The best candidates they're interviewing you as much as you're interviewing them.
This is where I'll really dig in, because if they say something like, I implemented this process, like that's a great kicking off, because then I'll ask 100 questions. Well, what did it look like before? How did you break down the problem? Did you do this?
And then the last question here is, why did you leave that job?
I love this question. It's a good one. Welcome back to the Evernest Property Management. So last week we went deep on EOS, and today we are talking through the system that has helped us hire the right talent at Evernest. It's the Who method by Jeff Smart.
Yeah, it's going to get you away from hiring based on your gut, the gut feel. Gray talked about that at the beginning. And it's going to basically turn hiring into more data and proven patterns. If you've ever felt the pain of a bad hire, trashing your culture, losing that big portfolio, this episode is going to be for you.
Matthew, when did you get introduced to the Who hiring method?
What's interesting is I don't remember the first time I heard about the book, but I can remember one distinct year. I bet it was probably 2016 or so. I remember reading the book, and it just changed the way I thought about hiring. I thought, just like with EOS, it was a structure that was very clear, straightforward, and easy to follow. And we implemented it that year, and I will tell you, it made all the difference in the world. Like, it was a game changer for our organization. And similar to the book EOS, we just opened it up, read it, and followed it to a T.
We're pretty simple people here. Like, property management is like, there's enough problems out there, and so if there are resources and kind of playbooks out there, it's nice to just leverage that. And especially as you get bigger and bigger, you can hand this book to new hires, to new managers, and just say, hey, follow this. Now, this is not going to make you perfect at hiring. Like, do you still make hiring mistakes today?
Absolutely.
Like, Jacob and I were talking about this before, kind of off camera, but like, I'm not perfect at hiring, because it's, who are you hiring, what the team they're in, what the training are in. But hiring is just, it's really, really tough if you don't like ask the consistent right questions, if you don't know what you're looking for. And so this method at least like increases your odds that you put the right people in the right seats.
Think of this as just increasing your batting average, right? You're taking your batting average. The book basically says most people are 50-50. Maybe you're really good and you get 60% of your hires right. This is going to take that up to as high as 90%. And I can tell you, like, from previous experience, that is not far off. You're going to have a much higher, a much higher batting average as a result of doing this process.
And I think probably some of it is this forces you to be really thoughtful and probably go a little bit slower. I think that alone would probably increase your batting average. So it's not necessarily kind of like, the questions that they're asking here are something magic, but it just puts some thought behind thinking about the person that you're in, thinking about the questions you're going to ask. And so kind of talk about, like, how do most people approach hiring?
Yeah, I would say, well, let me talk one thing I was going to say about getting it wrong. You hear all these just crazy numbers out there. It's, 2 times the salary, 10 times the salary, 15 times the salary. What I will tell you is, I don't know what it is, but it's super expensive to get the wrong person. Especially in property management, where the person, if it's a property manager or somebody that's dealing with vendors, that relationship is just really hard to stand back up. And so you may churn a bunch of doors as a result of getting the wrong PM. And the challenge here too is, in a lot of PM organizations, especially a growing one, you just don't know a bad property manager until it's too late, until they've done so much damage. And so again, it's like, I don't know what the number is, but this is just super painful.
I think also, if you don't have confidence in your ability to hire talent, that can cause you to leave people in a seat. if you're unsure about them. Because like, what's more painful, like none of the work getting done, or like having that, like leaving
Some
that
of the work.
some of the work
Yeah.
kind of getting done. And so I think like it also, if once you start getting really good at this, like it allows you to kind of like up level your team consistently. And not have this fear of, well, crap, if I like let them go, then like nobody's doing the work. And if I've got 3 people, like that's a daunting thing. And so I think this helps to unlock that. And that has really helped us be able to like scale and kind of grow teams, because it's challenging when they interact with your clients. Like these are really important positions.
So let's talk about it. And again, we're going to lean also on some of the EOS stuff that we talked about last week. It's in the EOS world, this is getting the right people in the right seats. Remember, the right people are those that are abiding by your core values, or bought into your core values. The ones in the right seats are the ones that get it, want it, the capacity to do it. One of the favorite things about this, the Who hiring method, is how intentional the first step is, the scorecard. And it's basically saying, hey, this is a picture of what somebody looks like. A lot of people will first go out and write the job description. My impression is that's probably getting it backwards. We still do write a job description here. But talk to the audience about a scorecard. Why is a scorecard so important?
So yeah, job description is going to be, how do I recruit people externally to present the job accurately to get the right candidates? But why you want to start with the scorecard is you start with, it's mainly 3 components. So it's, what is the mission of this position? So it gives really intentionality. Like this person will be managing a portfolio of 300 units, driving occupancy to 92%, cutting client churn to 0.5% per month. And so it gives like a lot of intentionality to like what the mission is of this position. And then you go to what are the objectives and then the outcomes. And so the objectives are very specifically probably 5 to 7 things, like the objectives of the position. Like what does the day-to-day look like? What are they solving for? What are the big projects that they're going to be focused on? And those are going to be a little bit more general, but then outcomes is where you get really specific. And so this is, when we write them, it's literally in the first 30 days, they will do X, Y, and Z. So they will finish and complete their onboarding. They will get their real estate license. Day 60 to 90, they will do this. Day 90 to 120. And I generally work it up to 6 months. But it's phenomenal because when you get on, great candidates will ask, what does success look like in the first 30, 60, 90 days? And it feels really good when you've thought about that, and it makes you look really good, like you've got your stuff together. And so those are kind of the 3 things that it breaks down, where you can put a lot of thought into, I want this person to be really successful. I think that also shows to the candidate.
Could not agree more. When you find an A player, they want to go fast and they want a lot of clarity on what a win looks like. And basically what you're doing with the scorecard is defining a win. And I actually take outcomes as far as 12 months. But again, like it bears repeating, it is about setting specific waypoints or targets for them to hit in their role. How do you know if they're doing well in the role? How will they know if they're doing well? And if you're clear and you hand this to them day one, an A player is like, all right, I know what the roadmap here is to my success, and I can go solve for these things.
Yeah, I think A players, I think everybody loves that. Everybody loves to know, am I doing a good job or not? And this is something that they can follow. The other component I missed was core competencies. And so talk a little bit about like what core competencies are on the scorecard.
Yeah, I think of this, we use culture index a lot to define what are people really, like, what are their gifts? What are the things that they're good at? Are they detail oriented? Are they efficient? Are they, do they have a high attention to detail? Are they more sales? Are they highly relational? Each job has a specific set of adjectives that would describe the person that would fit well in that role. And I think, a lot of times people say, oh, I don't like personality profiling. Culture index is based on a ton of data, but I like it because getting back to a higher batting average, we had a guy that used to work here who used to describe it similar to the book Moneyball. And what they found in the book Moneyball is that people that get on base, whether it's through a walk or through a hit, that you're just basically buying runs every year. And so if somebody gets on first base, there's a percentage chance that they're going to score a run. And it's basically a data-driven way to approach baseball. While similar, a personality profile or culture index or predictive index, one of those, is just a data-driven way to make sure that you're scoring the highest number of runs, that you're building the business with the most likelihood of success. And some people say, well, there's all different types of personalities and they can all be successful in every role. And that is true. We may miss on some people because we're focused on getting the right culture index. But the reality is when you're starting to hire a lot of people, then you're going to have to make sure that you do it in a very data-driven way. And that's the best way we found to do it.
And I think, I do think over a long enough period of time, like different personality profiles, how you're wired can be successful. The age-old example is like accounting and salespeople are wired differently. You see I have seen salespeople that are wired like accountants, but it took them 10 or 15 years. Oftentimes we don't have 10 or 15 years. And so you want to increase your chances that very quickly they can get off to a good start. And I think that personality profile is just like one of three things. It's like, what is their experience? What are their core competencies? How are they naturally wired? Are they people? Are they attention to detail? Are they great team players? Are they going to win at all cost? And then what do they want? And so I think the hiring method kind of like allows you to ask questions of all those three things together because you got to get those right. And so that's where the core competencies come in. And I'll get as specific as, they have X number of years leading a team. They've, hired and led, they've developed, their successor at 3 different times. They've got experience in single family maintenance. Like it blends a little bit of like experience in the traditional resume, but also with like, hey, they lean into conflict and they're not avoidant of it. And they're willing to, give hard feedback, but they're also encouraging to their team. And so I think this is where you can get pretty creative of like the right type of person behaves this way. And this is what you want in the organization so that you can screen for it.
And the way you're going to use this scorecard, the reason you do it first, you would think, oh, I found my person. Let me go create the scorecard, create what the win looks like. Nope. First thing you're doing is creating a scorecard because how do you know you found one if you don't know exactly what you're looking for? And that's the whole idea. Is this person I'm about to hire, what are the chances that they can create these outcomes? What are the chances that they are this type of person, right? So you're creating the scorecard first. And I think a lot of people want to jump in and start going through the candidates first. And what I would say is, no, it's time to zoom back, kind of prepare, make sure that you got everything in order and that you're very clear on what you're hiring with the scorecard.
That temptation is there. Even sometimes when I'm hiring for a completely new division or somebody to lead that division, you're like, well, let me see what's out there. But often you get trade-offs where it's like, ideally this person has X, Y, and Z, and person A has X and Y, and person B has Y and Z, and you're not patient enough. And so I think that's what this forces you to do.
And you start manipulating the job for the person.
Correct.
Oh, I like this person. Let me kind of like mold the job into them, which to some degree you can do in a much, much, much smaller organization. I wouldn't suggest you do it, but you can do it. But as the organization starts to grow, it is really job first, then the person fitting into it.
It is. And that is a really dangerous thing because I think if you're a competent leader, every time you do that, you take a piece of that person's job. And if you do that across 10 different people, well, it's like, okay, this person, isn't great at developing people, so I'm going to do that. This person's not great at hiring. This person's not great at process, but they are great at these other things. Like you end up with a team and then you're doing a component of their job, but still paying them full salary. That will limit you as a leader. And so I think you've got to be really disciplined and it's not always quick to find the right person. And so I think this forces you to kind of slow down and just remember that if you're starting to kind of sacrifice key parts of the job, if they don't have the ability or the roadmap to get there, either it's not going to get done or you're going to have to pick it up as a leader.
So as we move on to the actual process, like step 1 in the process, I want everybody at home to think about this as almost like a funnel. And the top of the funnel, it's like a sales funnel, right? Like the more people we can get into the process, the more people we can attract. And so, there's all sorts of things you can do as an organization to prepare to get the most people into the funnel. We have a whole marketing team that's producing content about being on the Evernest team. I'm producing content about how we think about hiring, how we think about people that work with us. So there's this whole brand out there that your company already should have.
Yeah, you want to get a bunch of eyeballs. I think one thing that the Who method talks about is the best source for getting in the right candidates is referrals. And so they tell about a story about the CEO of a really large company, and his favorite question that he would ask to vendors and suppliers is, hey, do you know any great people that I should talk to about hiring? And so I think you've got company brand. I think you've got personal brand. I think that a lot of people want to work for people that have a personal brand on social media, but also like leveraging your team members. Like if you get the whole organization asking, hey, who are the great people outside of our company that we should hire? Like those are all the strategies, at least the referral part's talked about in the Who book.
What are some other ways? I mean, obviously job ads, but what are some other ways that a company can generate a lot of leads for prospective team members?
Outside of those, the content engine is big. Probably LinkedIn is the best. And we've been talking about this a lot. We currently have a race to who's going to have more X followers. So go and follow me at Gray Hall on X. Do not follow Matthew.
I'm actually going backwards on
you?
X followers. Yeah, X is very hard for me.
I think in a niche like property management, like if you're posting consistently, I think that you will get eyeballs. If you're posting interesting content, like people follow brands or people follow people, not brands. And so like if you're a leader in an organization, I think that is a good way. Now I say this, Matthew's been telling me this for a couple of years. He has become famous on LinkedIn.
Just think if you had listened to me 2 years ago, 3 years ago, how famous you would be.
Yeah, so it's those, and then obviously having like the right recruiting channel. So having an applicant tracking system that can post on Indeed and all the other job boards. Like you got to get it out there, and then just asking around is probably like still the best way to find candidates.
All right, let's jump into the interview process. So you have candidates, they come apply, however they do that. Let's talk about, and this is straight out of the book Who. So first of all, kudos to the authors of Who. I've actually met one of them, Randy Smart.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like had a phone call with him. He's creating a new tool that was going to allow AI to help do some of these things better. So you should reach out if that interests you. But the first thing is the phone interview or the screening interview. This is the whole idea of the screening interview is you want to go through as many people as possible and weed out as quickly as possible those folks that just aren't going to be a good fit for the role. And you get really good at this. That's what I've found. I've probably done thousands of these screening interviews. Some of them as short as seconds and some of them as long as 45 minutes to an hour. But talk a little bit about the screening interview to see if you can weed out people quickly.
So once you've gone through the resumes and you find people, either if you use personality profile and resumes that like line up with the type of person, the best thing to do is get them on the phone. We go through 4 different questions. So there's kind of the intro, and then we ask 4 questions. So we ask, number 1, what are your career goals? Number 2, what are you good at professionally? Number 3, what are you not good at or not interested in doing professionally? And number 4, who are your last 3 to 5 bosses? And when we talk to them, what will they rate you on a scale of 1 to 10? And so the career goals is really important. So why do we ask what your career goals are?
I love this because if you think about it, you want intentional people to come work for you. Mm-hmm. And people so often get this wrong. They think I'm asking, what are you looking for in your next role? And so sometimes, most of the time, that's what they answer here. But the truth is, you want somebody that's taken a step back, that's thought about their career. It's shocking that somebody will work for 40 or 50 years without a vision for what they want to be when they grow up. And that's all this is, asked another way, when you're sitting on the front porch in your rocking chair and looking back over your career, what do you want to have accomplished? And so we've gotten some really cool things. Like one guy wanted to be a senator one time. We get a lot of people that want to own their own business. I love those because they have a lot of agency, they have a lot of autonomy. They want to help learn and grow a business. But you've had some probably really funny ones in the past. But how do you think about question number 1?
It's probably 70-80% of people have not thought about it or either just don't communicate it. And we will literally like ask the question, rephrase it exactly as Matthew did, trying to stretch them out to think about it. And oftentimes people want a steady job. They want kind of the next thing. They haven't really thought past 3 to 5 years. And that's not bad, but like I want somebody who is thinking like, this is where I want to go. Because the main thing is I want to know that I can help you get there. Because if you I mean, yeah, if you want to be a doctor, a horrible place for you to work. Like then you would just be coming to kind of like get a paycheck. If you want to like learn how to lead teams, if you want to learn how to build a service company, if you want to learn how property management works, like these are all great places. And so primarily like I, as your leader, I want to know that I can help you get there, because when they are motivated to get somewhere, I don't have to push them. And if that like they are being pulled there, then I can just point them in the right direction and then give them opportunities that help them get to their career goals.
And one of these answers may be, it doesn't mean that somebody always wants to climb the career ladder, right? Those are the very easy ones. Like, and we can see how that career ladder arc will help us. But a lot of this is, it could be too, I want to be the best I want to be the best property manager. I love property management. I want to be the best property manager in your organization. Those are the types of things. And we love those individual contributors. A book we're reading right now calls those the rock stars, like the Rock of Gibraltar. We don't just need people growing their career. We need people that are also focused on just being the best at the position that they're at.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think it's just somebody who has thought about that is really important.
That's the thing. It's about being intentional.
It is, yeah. And so that, I mean, it leads into the next question. What are you good at? And then the next question, what are you not good at? Oftentimes, people don't really think about what they are good at and what they're not. And that just tells me that either they hadn't thought about it, they're not comfortable to share, or they like just truly don't know like what they're good at. And I care a little bit less about like specifically what they say. I care more that they like are self-aware that they are good at things. And then does that line up with their personality profile is the other thing that I'll look at.
I think this is the self-awareness question. The better they are at coming up with a bunch of things that they're good at, means they've thought about it, means they've processed it, means they've tried a bunch of things. And I would say too, if somebody's earlier in their career, you need to be somewhat flexible on this because they probably haven't done enough. So, you know, when Gray was first interviewing, he was only out of school for a couple of years. You wouldn't have been as hard on Gray as you would be on somebody that had been out 20 years. Somebody that's been out of school for 20 years better be crystal clear on what they're good at. Or there's a reason that they keep trying to find new jobs. It's because they keep operating in an area that they just weren't created to be. But I think of this through the lens of, you know, let's call it like a football player. Somebody, you see so many people in their career that are clearly offensive linemen. They're 6'6", 330 pounds, and they think that they're a wide receiver, and they're out there running routes and trying to catch passes. And you're like, man, that is not your position. Like, you need to be in there blocking and doing things. You know, they see the wide receivers winning the Heisman trophies and want to be one of those when they're just not created to be that. And so everybody has a gifting, something that they would be good at. And it's about them being crystal clear on what that is and then being able to communicate it to us.
And more often than not, people could say some things that they are good at. What trips people up is, what are you not good at? And this is where you get the answer like, I work too hard, or
I care too much.
I care too much. Yeah. Or I'm willing to like do anything. Like, I think people are trying to show that like, hey, I'm being flexible, which I think can be like admirable, but like, I want people who know, like, do not put me in admin work. I can kind of do, you know, accounting work, but like, it's going to take me longer and it's probably going to be 80% as accurate as somebody else, but like willing to do it if that's like what requires of the job. And so like, what are they not good at? This is like really telling if they're pretty self-aware. And if they've got some experience, like, what are you not interested in doing professionally? Tells you, hey, I've tried this type of job. I didn't love it. Like, I was okay at it. But those two things kind of like hone in together if you're really self-aware about like what you're great at.
One of the things we focus on too here is humility. And I think of this as the humility question. If you're willing to be humble enough to say, you know, I'm really not good at this, Gray, and I'm really not good at that. Like, if this is what you're looking for, then I'm not going to be the right guy for you. I think in job interviews, you're always trying to impress the person on the other side. And really what it ought to be is more like dating. Hey, we're planning on getting married, and you need to know about all my warts just as much as you need to know about all my good things. And it's not like the us as the interviewer doesn't think you have warts. We know you have warts. We just want to know that you have warts. And if you know that you have warts, then like you were saying, you're very self-aware. You have the humility to know where you should not be doing well, or you will not be doing well. And I think that's just the way that you ought to look at a job interview is, hey, this is who I am. please tell me, interviewer, if you don't think this is a good position for me.
Yeah. Because it is emotional, and if they are unemployed or they've got other factors on, like it is hard to remove that. But it's like humility, but also confidence is just like, this is where I'm going. Like, these are the things I'm really good at. I think it lines up with what you need. I don't want to do these things, and I'm not great at these things. But like, this is me. Does that line up with you? Like, that's a much different like approach and mentality. And I love getting on interviews like that, opposed to like, yeah, I'm kind of good at everything, like willing to try anything, and I don't really know what I want. Like, I don't know if I can help you be successful.
I think people that are interviewing ought to do get a lot of reps as well.
Mm-hmm.
We used to be so frustrating for those that were, the recruiters would think, hey, I'm going to give you 3 candidates and you can pick the best one out of them. That's not how we think. We want to go through numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think interviewees ought to be out going through the numbers as well. Let me go interview in a bunch of places and find the right job for my skill set. Let me match those 2 things up. The last thing is question number 4. And this one's a pretty powerful question. And if you heard the way Gray mentioned it earlier, you have to ask it that way. And it feels weird because you want to say it the easier way that softens it a little bit. But the question is, who were your last 5 bosses, and how will they rate you your performance on a scale of 1 to 10 when we talk to them? What you want to ask is, who are your last 5 bosses, and how will they rate you?
Yeah.
Right. But
how do you think that they would rate you? But
exactly. But the fear of the fact that you're going to go talk to them, it's almost like a truth serum. All of a sudden, the candidate gets really crystal clear on what that boss is going to rate them.
Yeah. And so you're looking for, I've had people just dive into like monologues. You've got to kind of cut them off. Like, purely looking for here, like, are they going to rate you 1 through 10? You're probably looking for 8s, 9s, and 10s. And
you're not probably, pattern. You're definitely looking for 8s, 9s, and 10s.
Definitely looking. I was, the probably was for 8s. But you start to see a pattern there, and I would like write that down, remember that, because if you pass them to the next interview, you're going to want to bring that and really kind of dive into that. So,
and what I would say is, you want at least 2 or 3 9s and 10s,
mm-hmm.
and 1 6, 7, or 8 is fine,
mm-hmm.
right? Nobody's going to have a perfect career, but you want consistency where they know you're going to call their boss, and that they know that boss is going to give them a 9 or 10. I think of this as a career wake. We talk about career wakes here at Evernest all the time. And what I tell our team is, hey, you're leaving a career wake. And it's either going to be a positive career wake or a negative career wake. And it's up to you, what you do here and how you leave here to when somebody picks up the phone and says, hey, how did you think, Susie or Joe did? And, you're leaving a career wake. People
mm-hmm.
are going to ask the question. And so, you want to make sure that this person's career wake is consistently in the 9s and 10s.
Because we'll get into it later, but if everyone's a 6 or a 7 because they left on bad terms, they quit with no notice, they always had friction with their boss, like, those are things to dig into, because there is a pattern of how people like leave jobs. And there are one-off circumstances, but you start to see patterns when you start to talk to a bunch of candidates, and that's what you're looking out for.
And I wouldn't even take the time to dig into it. If they've had 3 bad bosses, you're just going to be the 4th bad boss. So
mm-hmm.
I think some people want to have all this.
You might be
grace.
Wrong there. You might be wrong.
You may be wrong, but for you, again, you're going for
mm-hmm.
the highest batting average here. And the best way to do that is, and if you're interviewing out there, the worst thing you can do is start talking poorly about previous bosses.
Mm-hmm.
There may be one where you say, hey, we just didn't get along. We didn't see eye to eye, and that's fine. But you do not want to be consistently talking about your relationship with your poor relationship with bosses.
All right. So 20 to 30 minutes, like the good ones might go 30 minutes. We also leave room for them to ask questions, and great candidates will come prepared with a list of questions. If you like show up and don't have any questions about the company, about the role, like, are you just applying to every single job and taking every interview, or do you actually like care about this? So if you're a candidate listening to this, like, come with specific questions about this. And I think you can interpret. Like if they have no questions, it's not automatically a disqualifier, but like the best candidates have had a bunch of questions.
The best candidates they're interviewing you as much as you're interviewing them. And I'll tell you just some feelings that I get having done this for a long time. When I get to the candidates' questions and all of a sudden I feel this sense of like anxiety, oh my gosh, I got to sell this. All of a sudden they're turning the tide on me. That's the right feeling you want after the phone interview. I think of it as like the hell yeah feeling. Like we definitely want this person to come in for a full face-to-face or be on Zoom for a full face-to-face. And now I've got to convince them to come back for a face-to-face. Now they're interviewing me. And I can always remember like sitting up in my chair, or if I was with somebody, dominating more of the conversation because I didn't want to screw that candidate up.
Yeah. All right. So we move past that. Hey, we like them. Then we go to a much longer interview. And this is
Can I jump in and say one more thing?
Yeah.
I think one of the things that people make as a mistake in hiring, going from one step to the next step, if you're saying, I just don't know and I need to find out more information, that is then they need to be a no. Mm-hmm. And if you're saying, I absolutely want this person in here, like that's, again, going back to the hell yeah. I think sometimes you say, oh, I just need more information from this candidate. And the next step in this process is such a time investment that my experience is if they're not a hell yeah, they're a hell no.
Mm-hmm. I've wasted a lot of time and seen teams waste a lot of time. But it's like with the information I have, I really think they can do it. Let me talk to them more to like figure out where I'm going to be wrong. But totally agree. If you don't get off the phone and you're just like, yes, that nailed, and that's probably 10% of the time. That's the reality.
Thing. Yeah. I mean, I was going to say it's a 10% thing on a phone interview.
It is. And so, and I even went through this recently. Like I didn't do a lot of hiring and then kind of got back into it. We had some teams that we were staffing up. And the first, 20 interviews, I was like, have I like lost it? Like, I don't know if these candidates are good or not. And then that 21st interview, I was like, this is who we need.
Yep.
And it was just like very clear. It like removed all those stories in my head of like, I don't know how to hire. And so I've been hiring for 10 years, hired hundreds of people. That still happens to me at this point when you just have candidates you're not sure of.
When you go 20, you just have to have the confidence that there is going to be somebody that's going to really excite you.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll have those dry spells. Sometimes you'll get 2 or 3 in a row and you'll think, oh, maybe I've lost it on the other side and I'm just being way too nice to these candidates.
All right. So we get a hell yeah candidate. We get them in there. The next interview is really walking through their resume. We'll kind of walk through some of the questions, but you want to go chronologically and you want to start kind of oldest to newest. Now, if they have 25 years of experience, like you probably don't have 6 hours to go through, but maybe pick the last 10 or 15 years. I think it's really important to kind of go back where they're having to stretch their memory to think about this. Because again, you're looking for patterns. And so if they have a long career, probably go 10 to 15 years, maybe 3 to 5 jobs. If they have a short career, they're a year or 2 out of college, like you might dip into college. When you hired me, like we talked about college and some leadership things I had done. We talked about a little bit of post-college. So if they don't have a ton, you just kind of want 3 minimum data points. Best cases, you got 5.
And I would say the higher up in the org, if you're going executive level, this thing could take 2, 3, 4 hours. Mm-hmm. And some of the best information I've gotten has been after 2 or 3 hours where the candidate starts to loosen up. You start to find out who they really are. And keep in mind, you're going to be working with this person for years. Mm-hmm. And so for me to invest 4 hours with an executive level or 2 to 3 hours with a senior leadership team member, this is not just an hour interview. No. And you're just trying to cram it into an hour. Like this is a huge investment. We're about to invest a ton of resources in this person. And for me to spend 3 or 4 hours with them just makes sense to make sure that I get it right. And remember, the best information is as you get to the end and they start to get a little bit tired, they start to loosen up.
Mm-hmm. And who talks about it? I mean, it's like literally each job is probably like 20 minutes, like at Formulaic breaks it down. I struggle to get through interviews in an hour and a half. Even with like frontline team members, if they have jobs, like when you start to kind of dig in and dig in and dig in. And so, I mean, we literally would take bathroom and water breaks midway through and then you kind of come back. And you one time told a story, you were hiring for somebody in finance, maybe a CFO, way back in the day. And it's like first 2 hours, like you were like this is great. One person had to leave. Hours 3 and 4, it came out that there was, they just completely blew up.
It was basically fraud that was going on.
Yeah.
And we were close to hiring this person as our CFO. And so, like, the last person you want is CFO fraud, right? So that's why that story came to my mind as well. Why you would spend extra time just making sure it's just time well spent. And I know everybody feels like it's time you don't have, but the truth is, it's an investment in saving you time in the long run.
Yep. All right. So the structure of it is really you get their resume and you start walking kind of oldest to newest. And so we ask basically 5 questions. And these are like leading off. This is not the only 5 questions you ask, but these are like the high points. And then within those, you want to start to ask, go deeper and deeper. So the first question is, what were you hired to do? Did they have a clear mission? Did they have an objective? Like, you get a little bit of experience trying to understand what their job is. So this should be like pretty quick, but you get an understanding of what they were working on, what they were doing. And so it gives you context for how you ask the next couple of questions. And then the next one is, what accomplishments are you most proud of? What are you looking for when you ask a candidate that?
Yeah, I'm looking for outcomes. Like, when you say, like, what were you hired to do? Was there a goal? Was there kind of a score? You're trying to figure out their scorecard. What made you successful? And then the second one is like, did you accomplish some of those things? The best A players that we've had have a history of accomplishing things. And so, if the candidate can't come up with anything that they've accomplished, or if it's kind of weak, you're like, hey, maybe you're not the right person for us.
Yeah. I think this is where like it takes some kind of pulling out. But if somebody's been there for 4 years and like their accomplishment is, like the team really got along, it's like, is that an accomplishment you're most proud of? So this is where I'll really dig in, because if they say something like, I implemented this process, like that's a great kicking off, because then I'll ask 100 questions. Well, what did it look like before? How did you break down the problem? Did you do this, or were you just involved in this? And so you start to like really understand, because what you're wanting to do here with accomplishments is you've got your scorecard over here, because I'm looking for somebody who can break down complex problems, simplify it for the team, and automate. I'm looking for people who can, take, a messy leasing funnel and standardize it, set incentives for the teams. And so if their accomplishment was, I took our days on market from 60 down to 30. Okay, great. It's a great launching point, because then I'm getting validation that they have the skill sets, they think about things the right way, and they've done, exactly what I'm looking for.
And I think you ought to be really careful about the words they use here. Sometimes people will soften it one way or the other. I have a history of, focusing on the words I and we. And I think they need to use it in an appropriate way. The way I would say this is, are they team oriented? We did this. We did, and then when you dig in, you kind of like realize, well, they led the team and they're giving credit to the collective we. Are they using we to basically soften something that they didn't do well, right? And they're using I when things are going good, and we when things are not going good. So you just need to be. You can also dig and understand, if you're paying real attention to the words they're using, what type of person this is.
Yep. Next thing we talk about is, what are low points during that job? It's always like kind of vague, but as I've been like thinking about it, like A players kind of understand like what it means. It's not a super specific question, but generally people kind of understand. But you're looking for like, what was the most challenging thing that they did? What was the biggest mistake that they made? Like, what things just made that job really hard? And so again, good kind of like launching off points to understand, like, was it, if there were team issues that were like the most challenging thing, like how did they work to resolve that? Did they give feedback? Did they work cross-functionally? If it was, outcomes that were not get there, like how did they approach problems? So you can see like resiliency, you can see like how people think if you kind of dig into what they say is the low points.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's okay. You kind of want them to have processed low points and thought about how they can get better. So, you also don't want somebody that's always blaming other people for their low points.
Yep.
Was it my boss or the real estate market or whatever? You want somebody that takes ownership of the low points.
Because when you draw this together and you got 5 jobs and at every job something was somebody else's fault, like that's going to be your fault.
That's a pattern.
Statistically speaking,
Yeah.
like that is a pattern. And so that helps look at that. But also like we've seen a lot of people kind of come into Evernest. I think we work at a different pace, and like you can see like what was the hardest you ever worked at something. And if that's 50% of like how our team works, like that's a pretty good indication that like, hey, this might not be a good fit. Or you got to set really clear expectations with this is going to be harder than anything that you've ever done. Do you really want it?
And I think it's at this point it's like important that we remind everybody we're asking each one of these questions for every job.
Correct.
So we're going through the same cycle for every job, and that's 3 of the 5 questions. The 4th question,
threat of so I generally ask what was your boss's name. I will ask them to spell it for me, even if it is John Smith. I will ask them to spell it for me because, again, that is the threat that it sounds bad.
It may be Smythe. You never
It might,
know.
and then I can't find them later.
Smythe. I don't know now that I'm saying
Correct.
it out
That
loud.
would be pronunciation. So what was your boss's name? How did you spell it? What was it like working for them? I think this is a general question, but I get a lot of, I think you can learn a lot by this. Like, how did they interact? What were their strengths? What were their weaknesses? In what context did you work together? And then you'll phrase it, when I talk to them, what will they tell me that your biggest strength back then was? So I like to hammer on when I call them and back then. I think people can change over time. And then you ask the inverse of that. When I talk to them, what will they say your areas of improvement back then would be? And so again, hoping this lines up with the first interview, but you're hoping that these are like honest and real answers. And again, you want to take these down because the next step is an actual reference check where you go and you validate these things with that boss.
Yeah, I think asking these questions, specifically how they tell you to ask them, is super important because it's the truth serum. It gives them the fear of the reference check or the threat of a reference check because what they're going to be is more on, or the right person is going to be more honest because they know you're going to call the boss. And if the boss is like, no, that's not what happened, then they know they're not going to get the gig.
Because most of we'll talk about with references, but this helps you get better reference checks opposed to just, what was it like? Nobody wants to be, I mean, if they got no skin in the game, like, unless they're raving about the candidate, it's hard to get really good information. So asking the candidate this will be helpful. I think also if you're hiring a leader, this is the point where I ask about their team, and hopefully you've talked about it, but you can ask, who was a counterpart in this role? Who was one of your direct reports? Like I've talked to direct reports before as a reference. And so just depending on what type of job they're in, you can use this section for like, who are the people at that company that worked with them in a leader context and a direct report context to validate, if they're going to do what I need them to do.
I like to dig into this and talk about when you started, especially if they had a team, when you started, rate the team. Like what were they? Were like an A, a B, a C? And then when you left, what were they? An A, B, or C? And generally speaking, everybody says they got better. But then you say, like, what did you do to make them better? Did you hire new people? Did you train them? Did you how if they were a C and they were an A by the time you left, like what changed? And you'll get a lot of insight into what type of leader or manager that person is.
And did they develop somebody, or did they leave the team high and dry, where they were the one doing everything and they kind of quit? Or do they have a pattern of like developing their successor so that they can take on more opportunity, and so that you can also see that in that pattern?
And then the last question here is, why did you leave that job?
I love this question. It's a good one. Because what you're looking for is, again, drawing patterns together, but the best people are pulled from job to job, either by big opportunity or somebody that they've worked with. Like you'll see this, like they've been pulled from company to company by somebody higher up in the company, like 3 or 4 times. And so ideally you want people that are pulled to the big opportunity, pulled by referral, opposed to pushed out consistently. And so, you learn a lot about kind of how they think and what the patterns are. Yeah.
The things that low performers will say is layoffs. Hey, we mutually parted ways. Obviously I got fired. That would be a pushed out type event.
Yeah. And like any one of those is like, we understand this stuff happens, but you're looking for a pattern.
If you've been laid off 3 times in a row though, that would be a problem.
I came across this last week, and that was my first thought is the candidate picking the right opportunities? Like if this happens 2 or 3 times, like it might happen. You might just have bad luck, but like there's a pattern there and you need to be aware of it. And one thing I do like to dig into is like, we just had mutual disagreement. It's never mutual. You got to dig in there. Like there was bad blood somewhere and you might both not like each other, but you got to get into like what happened. And so that can feel uncomfortable, but like, I want to understand if you've had 3 bosses that you mutually disagreed with, like I'm going to be the 4th. And I need to know, what's going to happen there.
So you're going to go through that for each job. And then at the end of it, you're going to ask the candidate if he or she wants to ask you questions. And again, similar to the first interview, you want somebody that asks a bunch of questions because you want somebody that's intent on interviewing you as much as you interviewing them, and want to make sure that it's a good fit for both parties. And when you're done with it, similar to the phone interview again, is this person a hell yeah? Do I want to spend more time with this person? Do I want to take this person to the next step? And if you're looking for more information after you've already spent 2 to 3 hours with somebody, this is not the right person for you. You're looking for the best.
We used to literally, sometimes when there were like disagreements or questions, like we get the entire company, like 10 people back in the day, and we talk about it. And all the ones that stick out in my mind right now of like where we had questions, where they didn't answer a cultural question right, like none of those people are still here at the organization. So just again, like unless people are just knocking this out of the park, very rarely do you have kind of questions that need follow-up that you're going to get more information.
The way Who describes an A player is that an A player is somebody that would be, based on the role and the compensation, in the top 10%. That's what Who describes as an A player. And so you want to be constantly thinking about it through the lens of that. And the other thing I think kind of like a good point to make at this point is you don't want to be hiring better than your lowest person in that role. If you're saying, oh, this person is better than my worst person, that's the wrong way to think about it. Amazon had this thing they called the bar raiser, where they said, we want to be hiring above the median. So I would think about in your organization, if you're hiring a role that has more than just 1 or 2 people that are doing that role, you want to find out what the median person is and decide, hey, I'm going to hire better than that person.
And the one thing I think that you'll hear throughout this is I think you can look at a resume and you can hire for specific experience. And I see a lot of people do this. Well, they have been a property manager before in this industry, and that checks all the boxes. I care way more about how intelligent are they? What are their interpersonal skills? What have they learned? How quickly can they learn? Like, where do they want to go? You can learn anything. You can learn property management. It might take a little bit longer to like learn the tactical things, but what we are talking about here is like the core competencies, getting those right, and then you can like learn anything. And so that is like way more important. Do not just like let a resume or they worked at XYZ company blind you that, hey, they're going to be successful in this role. You've got to really understand like how they think and how they're going to be successful.
All right, let's get to the third step. And this is a little bit where we differ from Who. We actually changed this step over the year. Over the years, we called it the cultural interview. Who calls it the focus interview. What Who would say is we want to take experts in that piece, and I think a lot of this is for executive level talent. We want to take experts and drill down and make sure this person knows, and this person is going to be able to accomplish the outcomes of the scorecard.
Either experts, or if you're hiring subject, like they have experience in this.
Subject matter experts.
The challenge is when it's generalist. Like it would be tough to grill somebody if they're an entry-level maintenance coordinator on maintenance. Like that's where you're looking more for kind of like the intellect. But culture is really important. And culture, I think, should be weaved throughout this. I think you should see, hey, are they team focused? Do they win together? Hey, do they do the right thing when they're faced with are they growing daily? But we have like questions that are designed to kind of get at those. But I do think also this is where we've started to integrate more of the scorecard and the outcomes, and based on how they're wired and based on the information that we have and based on kind of like what their core values are they going to be successful kind of with the specifics of the scorecard?
And what does this interview look like at Evernest today?
So, and for some roles, we've combined this kind of face-to-face and cultural. So we've got 3 team members, and the first half of it is going through the 5 questions that we talked about, and then there are cultural specific questions. And so it's mixing kind of like the tactical things, but then like more about who the person is. And so most of them, we've like combined it together. And so it's about an hour and a half or 2 hours today. Previously, we did like hour and a half for face-to-face and then a separate interview for culture. That was 3 separate people. We found it tough from a challenging, like from a scheduling standpoint to kind of like
Get everybody
move fast and get everyone organized. And so about 6 months ago, we made that change.
That's great. And so is there anything else you want to say about the focus portion or the cultural portion?
No, the last is like, if you want to get together with the people hiring, try not to allow groupthink. Like you want to sit there and after every interview, kind of like write down your thoughts and like, were they a hell yeah, or were they a no? And then the team gets together, kind of debate and discuss. And ultimately it's up to the hiring manager, consolidating all that feedback, but you don't want, again, hell yeahs is what we're looking for here.
I think Amazon does this as well. We've studied a lot of Amazon because one of the challenges as we've grown is how do you scale the hiring process, right? Because it's just like the reps. The more you do it, the better you get at this hiring process. And how do you scale an organization when a lot of new people are having to hire people? And so we've thought about it through the lens of Amazon a bunch. But what they do is they take they're supposed to take copious notes while they're interviewing, and they let the other team members read it before. So you're kind of like anchored to your opinion, and then everybody reads everybody's opinions, and then they discuss it internally. Yeah. And I think that's the right way, right? Or a good way to do it to make sure that you don't get groupthink. Because I'm the CEO here, and when someone rates the meeting a 6, and I was about to rate it a 9 or a 10, it still gives me anxiety to go out on a limb and say 9 or 10 when someone else thought it was a 6.
Yep. Yeah, it is. And it totally agree. So we do that today, and I think it's like been really helpful.
All right. Last piece of the interview. This is the 4th section, is the reference check. We've been threatening this the whole time, and now here it is.
Follow up on that throughout.
And I'll tell you, remember the phone interview, about 1 out of 10 makes it through, is my experience. And then the face-to-face, about 50% of those make it, of that, like the one that goes down, about half of those. And then the cultural was about half, back when we used to do, when I used to be fully involved in this. Yeah. Is that still similar numbers, you think?
Yeah, I'd say so. I remember when I got hired and then seeing the hiring review, I was like, how the heck did I get hired here? Like we just weed out so many people through this. So yeah, it's those are probably directionally accurate to today. So you have references. Again, you want to ask the candidate. Where I see people fail is they say, give me 3 references. No, what you should be doing is throughout all of the time that you spent with the candidate, who are the main players in this story, and you saying, hey, I want to talk to this person, and this person. Can you give me their contact information and coordinate for us to be able to talk?
That's important. You want that person coordinating, because if they don't coordinate, then there's a high likelihood you're not going to get somebody to reach back out. Yeah. And you make a great point. The last thing you want is their brother-in-law, their sister-in-law, their best friend at work to be giving them references. And certainly those are important. Maybe you can learn something from them. But you want to, as you're going throughout the interview, I'm always circling names. And I'm saying, I want to talk to this guy. I want to talk to this lady. That's how I think about it as I'm going through it. So we're there. You get 5 to 6 names, and you ask them to set up like a reference check.
Yeah. At a minimum, like, hey, let them know that I'm going to be reaching out. And if you ever have trouble, kind of push it back on the candidate. But once you're talking to these people, you're asking them, hey, verify, like, what context did you work? So it kind of just helps jog their memory. This might've been 10 years ago. So it helps jog their memory, but it helps, confirm kind of what the candidate told you. And then you're asking them, what were their biggest strengths? And so you want to hear what they're saying. And then oftentimes, if there's a mismatch, I will say, well, this person said, hey, they were great at building and leading teams. Like, how would you rate them on that? And so you can start to ask the questions that the candidate brought up. Same thing. You ask, what were their biggest areas of improvement back then? See what they say. If it differs from the candidate, that's a data point. You can ask follow-up questions.
Can I say something about that? I love because everybody's loving to brag about candidates' biggest strengths, but they always hesitate to say something about their area for improvement. And what you said the words, what were the person's biggest areas for improvement back then? And what that does, remember, like, all these words are really important. The person that's giving the reference check is saying, well, certainly they've gotten better at this by now. Yeah. And
gives them,
you're saying, but generally speaking, people don't change that much. But you're saying back then, so you're giving them permission to have already changed by now.
Yeah. So there's some psychology that Who talks about. This is all, we've learned from them, but it is really helpful because it lowers the threshold to get really good feedback. It is a red flag if I don't actually know if I've ever had anybody tell me like, nope, they had nothing. They were pretty good, but that would be like a red flag. They're either being like too polite or, they weren't close enough to like know them, which kind of like, makes the reference irrelevant. And the last part is, how would you rate them on a scale of 1 to 10? Who says this is the most important? So like 8, 9s, and 10s would be a pass. Anything 7 below would be like a C player. Have you ever had it where the candidate says they would rate me a 10 and the reference says 7 or vice versa?
Yeah, I don't I do remember them being better.
Mm-hmm.
The reference check being better than the candidate.
The candidate was hard on themselves. Like they would rate me 8.
But I don't remember them being lower. I don't remember a time.
Yeah, I don't either. Because I think at this point, like if we talked about the numbers, like 10 people goes to 5, goes to 2, like
I
you've
found
done enough
candidates
work
to be much harder on themselves than their previous employers are.
Yeah, and sometimes they don't know.
But this is also a follow-up question. If there's somebody you're really interested in hiring and the person says a 6 or a 7, the follow-up question could be, what would it have taken for them to be a 10?
Mm-hmm.
And then you get another data point on areas for improvement.
Yeah. Because then that saying, had they done this, this, and this is different than they weren't doing this.
Yep.
And so you kind of have to like back into it. And then, you could follow up questions. I generally layer it into the strengths and improvements, but if the candidate mentions struggling with X, Y, and Z, you can kind of say, hey, did you experience that? Like, did you give them feedback? Like, did they improve on that? And so again, you're just gathering data here. Is what the candidate telling me actually accurate and line up with like what I need?
Yeah. And you get this from the second interview, which is the face-to-face interview. The candidate said that you would say, I struggled with this. Can you tell me more about that? Those are you're giving them permission to speak on their area for improvement there. I think so many people devalue the reference check. I don't know that I've ever said no to a candidate because of the reference check, but I just think you learn so much about the candidate from the reference check.
I'm trying to think back to if that has ever, I don't think it's ever swayed me either. If you hire, I remember you I think you talked to my dad because I didn't have a bunch of work history. And so you got to get scrappy sometimes, but I think it does help kind of like, it makes me feel better though, because I think you question yourself in the hiring process so often. And we talked about it earlier. You're questioning, are you looking for the right things? But it's almost like, again, validate. It's why I look for reviews on everything I buy online. It's just like, I want to talk to somebody else and make sure that this candidate is not, wooing me or kind of pulling one over. And so, don't send the email and just like look for one word responses. Like you want to get on the phone, hear them. I know it takes some extra effort, but like it is worth it. All
right, let's talk about the end. This could be a no at this point, but then if it's a yes, to me, then it's all about making sure that you sell the candidate, right? An A player is going to have opportunities to go different places and do different things. And so you're probably going to be competing with other organizations to hire this person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the person you want. If other organizations are desperate to hire him or her, you want to go hire him or her. So talk about like selling the vision of the organization, how important that is.
So I think knowing where they want to go, knowing like what is important to them allows you kind of sell to like what they need. I think a lot of the things that I sell on, and a lot of the people we've hired is like, if you want to have an impact, like Evernest is a great place to be. And so like, if you want to like leave your fingerprint, if you want to have autonomy, like, so you talk about what is the autonomy they have, and like, what is the body of work? There's obviously like finances and there's like the monetary component of this job and how it relates. But then there's a lot of selling on like the culture. Cause I think that's why I've, still love working here. And so like, how do they tie in? How do they add to the, culture? How are they going to be made better by being in the culture? And so you're starting to sell on like, in the job, where you're going, the monetary benefits, but also like who you are going to work around and how that's going to shape them. So those are a lot of things that I think about whenever I kind of like think about selling the job.
And when I think about selling it too, it's about where are we headed as an organization. And I've found that A players get really excited about the vision for the organization, get excited about a big, hairy, audacious goal. And those are the types of people you want to come work with you that get fired up about getting to 250,000 doors. And I remember, we've talked about this a bunch. We told you we were going to get to 25,000 doors over a decade ago, and that excited you. That got you really excited about the vision for the organization and thought, man, I'm kind of getting in on the ground floor and going to get to grow with this organization. And that's been true.
It has. Yeah. And I think the other component of here is I think there's some candidates that like at different levels, like you might need to talk out of the job. Like I think that's also a strategy is just like, so you can sell them, but there's also like, hey, this is going to be really hard. So like growth and vision is really exciting, getting you where you want to go, but also like letting them know the realities of the sacrifice and the challenge and like the hard work that's going to get there. I think that can also be layered in here because you want them to go in eyes wide open with like what it's going to take for them to be successful here.
Everybody knows I'm a huge college football fan, and for the arc, most of the arc of Evernest's story, Nick Saban was the football coach, and I always thought, man, what a perfect example. He has only a certain number of kids he can sign on scholarship every year, at least back then, but he can go out and recruit anybody he wants to, and I think about that at Evernest. We have a certain number of roles here at Evernest, but we can go recruit anybody into that role. And we ought to think of each role as an opportunity to recruit the best player we can possibly put on the field in that position. And I think about it like we are recruiting A players. You don't just hire them. You've got to recruit them. You got to go get them. You got to go sell them. You got to feel like they're interviewing you as bad as you're interviewing them. And when that happens, and both of y'all make this match, like it becomes magical because when you get the right person in the organization, they just take the ball and run with it. And it's the biggest relief ever. And I can just think back at the great hires we've made over the years. And some of y'all have been here for over a decade. Some people have been here for 5 years, 6 years. And it's like the gift that keeps on giving. We were very disciplined on the front end, found the right person, and now we keep getting to reap the benefits of hiring the right person.
Right. That's my biggest takeaway is it takes a lot of really, really hard work on the front end, but there's probably nothing that has more leverage than being really intentional with hiring, finding that person, and within 2 weeks you say, how did we operate without them? And I'm so glad that they are here.
I mean, you mentioned leverage. It's the ultimate leverage. You aren't just hiring an employee, you're buying back your time when you hire the right person. So my challenge to you who's listening, look at the next role you need to fill. Don't just post an ad. Take the time, get ahead of it, write a scorecard out, and define what success looks like first.
And a good step, if you haven't, get the book Who by Jeff Smart. It goes great with EOS. Those are two of the books that we give every new manager and leader here. I think every property manager could benefit hugely from having both of those.
And we will put an example of an Evernest scorecard in the show notes for you. And if you want to download it, tweak it, and you can start building your own A team.
Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in to the Evernest Property Management Show. Go out and find your A players, and we will see you next week.
Bye, everybody.